selling the guy to a direct rival after him shining for Borussia Dortmund just because of the profit. That's it. I see no reason for them to get rid of this guy. Go ahead.
This is so beautiful because all year long, Chelsea fans have used the fact that Poch loaned out Matson as one of the reasons why, you know, they want him out, because Matson is so talented and he's so good. And when he made the Champions League team of the season, they're like, oh, look, we could have had Matson, but Pochettino. And the first player they sell this summer is Ian Matson. That's the funniest thing I have seen in my whole life. Funniest thing I have seen in my whole life. And it shows you, we warned you all. We warned you all about the Clown Lake ownership and no one wanted to listen. And now you have to see your club get destroyed step by step by step by step. If you're truly about progressing and developing young talent, why don't you sell Chilwell? Exactly what Mo said. Why don't you sell Cucurella? Isn't Ian Matson there? Didn't he play in a Champions League final? Wasn't he one of the people like, oh my God, there's no way. There's no way. We actually let Matson go. Pochettino has no eye for talent. Where? And now this is happening right in front of your very own eyes. I cannot wait. I cannot wait, because this season, I feel like it's the season where finally Chelsea fans wake up. Now, from Aston Villa's perspective, this is a fantastic signing. I mean, Luca Dean has been very underwhelming for Aston Villa. He never ever lived up to the hype that he had at Everton, ever. Like, you know, because when Luca Dean was at Everton before they bought him, there was a period in time where people were like, you know, Luca Dean is one of the top 3, top 4 left backs in the league, stuff like that. He never lived up to the bill. And if Aston Villa do want to compete in the Champions League, when I say compete, obviously not trying to win it, like compete as in not get humiliated and embarrassed and stuff like that. Like they want to show a positive showing of themselves. Getting someone who played the Champions League final is a fantastic positive step for them. So from Aston Villa perspective, this keeps 100%, this makes sense. And they have to move to the right direction. So, you know, I like the signing from Aston Villa, but this sale makes no sense from a Chelsea perspective. I thought Gallagher was the first one they're going to sell.
So I want to be balanced when it comes to Chelsea. I found it really interesting in the last 24 hours looking at Chelsea accounts on social media. I saw Simon Phillips, who's very well respected in the Chelsea fan base, kind of call out a lot of the big Chelsea accounts when it was reported they put the bid in, and I'm going to probably butcher his name, but when they put the bid in for Moroderin, I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not 100% sure. I've run it through Google Translate about 20 times.
I tried as well.
Yeah, but again, and I said on my video earlier on today, I said I'm not going to say that's a ridiculous bid to make. I don't know anything about the player, so it would be completely and utterly disingenuous to say it's a bad move or say it's a good move. I know zero about him, and I know that no Chelsea fan knows anything about him. They might be researching now, because he is a name that has not once been mentioned by anybody on any video, any bit of content, any fan. The Tacticos, nobody's spoken about him. So, but I've seen Chelsea fans really kicking off at some of the approaches for him, for Duran. And then others say, well, no, it's our model. We're looking for these young players. And then some say, well, they were meant to go back on their word on that. And there seems to be a little bit of a civil war going on. The Matson situation is really interesting. My gut feeling is, I don't know if he's as good as some Chelsea fans said he was. So to your point, Matson. So I think he's a good player. And Dortmund wanted him. I'm not saying he's a bad player.
Yeah, but why did they use that against Poch last season? You heard it with your own ears.
That's exactly the point I was about to allude to. I think he's good, okay? I'm not too sure if he is this star that a lot of Chelsea fans said he was, and then they use that as a reason to beat Poch with. They're the ones now that I've enjoyed watching their socials or seeing them in the group chats today, because I've seen people allude to, well, at least we're not selling him to a rival. You kind of are selling him to a rival, not a historical rival, but a team currently better than you who are in the Champions League. Equally, this proves that Poch wasn't the reason that he left. Now what have you got to say? And I think that, or it proves that their view of so they've either got to be angry at their owners because they think he's great, or they've got to admit the player isn't as good as they thought he was.
Lose for them, basically.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I don't think this is bad, but like aside from that, in terms of the fan wars, my personal opinion, I don't think it's bad business. yes, it's for FFP. There is no doubt about it. There are certain players that are on the transfer list are academy players, and they're going to make them pure profit. And yes, they've sold their hotels and all these things, but they're still sailing. It's true. They're still sailing close to the sun. And although Chelsea fans say they're not, they are. So that's partly why it's happening. But I think £37 million for a player that they don't particularly...
Terry, when did you start the football, Terrace? How long ago?
2017.
If I told you in 2017 that 6 years later, 7 years later, you're going to be talking about selling hotels on a YouTube stream, would you have believed me? You know how mad that is?
No.
And you know the funny part, you just skipped back. Like, it's okay. Like, it's normal. We've normalized
the thing is, as I said to Chelsea fans, it isn't normal. Well, it isn't. It isn't. It's normal for businesses to sell off assets, but typically that's when they're struggling. Businesses try to acquire assets because it grows the valuation of your business, and so doing that is generally a sign that there is a problem, if that makes sense. So, and look,
can I add something to
I hope for Chelsea fans this goes the way it's meant to, but I look at their summer and we're going to get into more of their deals in a minute because there's some really interesting stuff on Elise and some others coming up. Some of the transfers they're looking at, the Elises as an example, they've signed Tosin. I think they're brilliant deals. I'm not going to comment on young Samu because I know nothing about him. I look at the Duran deal. I think to myself, I can't. I've tried to see the positives. No I just don't see a very good football player in him. So that maybe that's why I'm biased on that. I look at that and just think, you know, you've got Gudassi, who is available for a £15 million release clause. Yes, he's older than the sort of the buying age that they want to go for. That just feels like a better option than another young, raw striker who may or may, no matter how good your development is, may or may not make it. You have no idea how good young players are going to. It doesn't make some sense to me. It doesn't make sense.
Before we go on, Sam, I see now what is happening. Some of the Chelsea fan base are turning all into accountants. Some of them, I see you guys in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we made 70 million profit on Ian Matson and Lewis Hall. What is happening now? That's exactly that commentary. Is that you are switching whenever you like from we want the talent to you're an accountant and a financial person now. You're switching whenever it suits you.
Under Roman, you would have never made this comment ever.
You would never talk about the money. We need to make profit. We need to do this. You would be talking about we want to, yes, you're talking about the wages and all the stuff, but you turn into the money when it suits you. And you turn into, but Duran has a lot of talent.
Chelsea Football Club, what about winning trophies?
Exactly. And also they talk about, okay, but Duran has a lot of potential. We scouted him. You turn into the talent when you want to, and you turn into the financial person, the banker, when you want to. Let's just establish something. Chelsea now, as Terry said, are trying to survive financially. I can see it now. And it's very obvious. Chelsea are trying to make the deals that will make them in the year or two financially stable, because I think what happened with that £1 billion they spent and all the stuff and the contracts they did and not making the Champions League, it looks like the owners are trying to comply, not to get punished. The owners are trying to balance the books by selling the talent.
But that was always going to partly happen. And Uncle Jester makes a good point here. The law changed in football maybe 3 years ago that meant clubs couldn't loan out as many players as they were. Chelsea had a 30 to 40 million pound a year income that came directly from all the players they loaned out. I've always felt with Chelsea, unless there was a very special talent like a Reece James, I never felt their academy was like Man United's. Man United's academy is genuinely to try and create a star that can be in the first team. I've always felt like Chelsea's primary function of its academy was to make money for the football club. The same as a lot of clubs around, you know, Lyon speak about this, that they put so much money into their academy because what they sell players for is where the majority of their income comes from. So there are multiple clubs around Europe that kind of have those, that have models like that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, I'm being a bit of an accountant at the minute with Man United. I don't want us to overpay for players. I want us to be prudent because I want us to set a standard. But I actually believe that standard is going to help us in the future on the football pitch because of how we'll be perceived inside and outside of football. I think it's all part of that game. So look, the reason with Chelsea that I'm to and froing about how good or bad I think this approach is probably because this is the third summer under Clear Lake and it hasn't gone well so far. So I find it really difficult to go, this is all just going to be fine. Equally, I don't want to sit here and be disingenuous and go, it's going to be a disaster. There's no way this works. Because actually, some of the players they're getting rid of, when I think of Conor Gallagher, when I think of Matson, when I think of Chalobah, who, by the way, might join Man United, I don't look at any of these players as individuals that are good enough by themselves, even if all three were in the team together, to make Chelsea champions of England and champions of Europe again. What I suppose the interesting point of it for me is just the players that have, the fans that are all at war with each other, because some think Conor Gallagher should stay. Some think he's amazing. Some have absolutely gone crazy at Poch all season for loaning out Matson. Now they're sort of changing their tune, going, oh, well, you know, it's 37 million. That's really good.